Show me the money, show me the money, show me the money. Oh!
York Avenue.
New York Avenue with a hotel, $1,000, Arif.
Pay up.
Pay up. Ooh. Sweet. That's the way you play.
And welcome to Hitting Home. And our guest, he knows real estate.
That was
incredible.
That was intense.
It was.
Our guest is a shark.
Yeah. Our guest is a shark.
I learned a lot about real estate in the last year and a half at the Real Estate
As you
Association.
should. And our guest today is, if you don't already know, Tim Hudak, who is the CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Association,
Welcome back,
overseeing, 70,000 realtors in Ontario and
Yeah, you
39
got it.
boards?
Growing all the time, yeah. About 75,000 probably at this point in
75,000.
time.
And you're into year 2 or year 3 now?
So 2 years, and we're February, so 2 years and 2 months on the job. And you can see I learned a lot. I always go with orange, buy property, and build those little red hotels with no doors and windows.
Excellent.
That's the way to make money in real estate.
And what a 2 years you've had, though.
Well, thanks.
The marketplace, I mean, they've needed a leader at the helm, right?
Yeah, it's been all over the place.
We've had a wild cycle for the last couple of years.
Well, yeah, I mean, still, I think Barrie and Simcoe County are looking really good. Time had a lot of people going to be moving in here. But you're right, Arif, we've seen a lot of ups and downs. 2017 was crazy with some of the increases. Calmed down in 18. A lot of things now in the environment in 19 as well around politics, the stress tests federally, what's going to happen on transportation, infrastructure. There's a lot of things, but nice to say I've enjoyed it tremendously.
Absolutely.
Being CEO for Ontario's Realtors, and it was great to be back in Barrie, to be on Hitting Home, and also to spend some time with the Barrie District Realtors today.
Glad to have
Earlier
you.
today, that was quite an event, yes. And it was great that you...
Well, you've touched on a number of topics that we're going to talk about today,
Great.
which is great. But I mean, one of the things that's actually been great for your association is having someone with the political savvy at the helm, because a lot of what we've seen in the last year and a half has been, as you mentioned, it's been politically driven. At least from our perspective. So if someone who knows how to navigate and lobby and speak with your colleagues at Queen's Park and in Ottawa. So
Yeah, I mean, it's a big part of the job, right? Real estate is a heavily regulated industry. As a realtor, it's a heavily regulated profession, so that means you need to interact with the province, the city and county, of course, and the national government, because all of them, tend to meddle in the real estate market. And there's a big risk if they don't know what they're doing, if they pull the wrong string somewhere. It can have huge consequences for average hardworking people in Barrie. For example, if they go too far, people can lose tremendous value in the single biggest asset when you're middle class, and that's the family home.
So let's actually jump into that, if you don't mind. I know we've got a bit of some segments figured out, but can we dive actually into the impact on the average resident who's making that biggest purchase, that biggest asset they've got? The stress test, for one, has had an impact. If we go back a year, we were talking predominantly about British Columbia and foreign buyers and watching that balloon out of control, apparently. But then policy came in that was a blanket across the entire country, and it is impacting people in smaller communities.
Yeah, I call it the pile-on. Look, I mean, one of the great things about our country is that we have a strong middle class. And ever since our first Prime Minister, John A. Macdonald, until recently, every year the percentage of homeowners in Ontario and Canada increased. It's a great story. Even through the World Wars, the post-Depression, the 70s, you were much more likely to own your own home than your parents or grandparents. Great Canadian success story until recently. And believe it or not, in a time of relatively low mortgage rates for our lifetime, at a time of pretty solid economic performance in Ontario and in Barrie and Simcoe, we've actually seen home ownership decline.
Declined in the last year or two, nationally.
Yeah,
and
and
that's not
a big part of that is government just piled on in a massive way, and all that weight has really slowed things down for homeowners.
It's pushed the bar too high.
So let's be
It's not
clear,
that the
though.
want isn't there, it's the ability is hurting.
And that's not posturing, Mike. That's statistics. You're giving us statistics since the beginning of Canada.
Yeah, it goes like this, ramps up nice and high, and then bops down the last 3 years. And at the provincial level, I thought we saw a lot of new rules and regulations, probably all well-intentioned, but the pendulum swung so far, it made building a new home very expensive. We saw at the national level the stress test, new restrictions on mortgages. It made it harder and harder for a young millennial couple to get a mortgage and get a place of their own. And at the local level, you know, you've got a lot of red tape that also gets in the way and slows things down. I mean, it's better here in Barrie and Simcoe, but parts of the province, it can take 10 years to build a new housing development.
Absolutely.
And every month of delay, that means that the price of that home is going to go up because of inflation and farther out of reach of the average family.
And I think the awareness is there provincially for sure, and it's starting to be federally in response to what they've implemented in the last year or two. I think they're taking a second look at the stress tests and that, and seeing the collateral damage that's been done with some of these things. And
let's talk about that for a second. We got a minute before we go to break, but let's actually dive into that. Auria and you have actually started to get involved in that discussion at a federal level, and you've actually said enough is enough. You guys need to dial it back. Give us a minute's worth of what you've been doing.
Yeah, that's right. We work with our national association, the Canadian Real Estate Association. But you're right, Arif. We've been involved here, saying the stress test, you know, has gone too far when you compare it with all the other restrictions, and that means that about 200,000 people in our province have either had a chance to get a home pushed away from them, or had to settle for something much smaller, or not upgraded when the kids come along. And you know, while that may have made sense, the market was hot, now that noose has become tighter, and the more mortgage rates go up, and you have to add on 2 points on top of that to qualify for the stress test, it's become cruel for families trying to get into the market.
And I think when we come back, what we'd like to do is shift it over a little bit to rules and regulations governing our industry, and talk a bit about REBA, and tell people who may not know what REBA is.
Well, Mike, why don't you touch on that for a minute, actually?
We do have a little bit of time. Well, the Business and Brokers Act, REBA 2002, I believe it is. You actually played a part of it. You were the cabinet minister.
I was the minister, yeah. Back in 2002, I was actually the minister responsible for the Real Estate Business Brokers Act. Yes. It was a younger version, more hair, you know, 15 pounds thinner, better looking, if you can believe that.
It's hard to believe.
Thank you. I love being on your show. But 2002, look, the price of a house in Toronto in 2002, average, $245,000.
Wow.
Can't even imagine it was in Barrie or Niagara, where I'm from.
No.
You couldn't buy a shack these days for those prices. And when most real estate exchanges were done by a fax machine, and when was the last time you used a fax for a real estate exchange?
Quite a while ago.
So it's time to get our rules into the 21st century to reflect modern real estate practices, modern prices, to give realtors the tools they need to serve their customers even better, and quite frankly, to make sure our goal at the Ontario Real Estate Association is, when you're making the biggest purchase of your life, buying or selling a home, we want the realtor at your side to have the highest professional standards, the best training and education, and the most modern tools to help you out.
Excellent. So let's elaborate on that when we come back from the break.
When we come back, we got just a couple of seconds, actually, and this is something that we didn't think we'd have time to. 10 seconds on technology, artificial intelligence. Do you think what kind of impact is that going to have?
And it's going to empower consumers. It'll put more demands on realtors, but it'll mean that more consumers start out, I think, with the search, gathering the basic info, and then they go to the realtor to help narrow down that search, close the deal, and be their advocate. The realtor role is going to change, but it's going to be at the most critical point of the transaction.
Beautiful. Thanks for that segue. When we come back from the break, we're going to speak more with Tim Hudak, who's the CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Association. We're going to talk changes in legislation and professional standards. We'll be right back.
All right. Yeah, that's our intro.
And welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif, and we've got our great guest, Tim Hudak, who's the CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Association. Thanks for being here with us.
For sure. I know you guys live together, too. You're a nice couple.
You'd be surprised what comments we
just
hear out in the community.
On the side. It's our side job, moving.
Before we went to break, we were talking about the impact of technology and artificial intelligence, and what does that hold for professionals who have maybe been in the industry for 20 years, and my industry as well, my professional associations really engaging with our community, with the brokers and agents, to say how this is going to impact, and a lot of projections out there. But if there's one headline that I read recently, which I was really thankful to hear, yes, technology is going to play a role. Yes, the consumer is going to make use of going online to do these transactions, but nothing will ever replace the value of the human interaction and the good counsel that you get from the professional.
I'm betting on the realtor. Look, there's been tremendous investments. I think about $17 billion in North America last year alone on prop tech, so property technology. And you can bet against the realtor and try to replace her with a robot, or you can bet with her and helping her, get back to customers faster, helping narrow down
People
searches.
want service.
They do, for sure. There's the most two precious commodities today in 2019 are time and money.
Absolutely.
And if you can save people either of those,
Yes.
they're going to come to you. So I'm betting that realtors will be quick adopters of technology to help save the consumer time and money. Here's two reasons why I'm confident about that. Number one, a while ago, before you young gentlemen were born, there was something called the internet that was invented.
The what?
And back in those days, yeah, exactly, in those days, if you wanted to see real estate listings, you had to go to the office, and they're like up on the window.
The gold book there.
Exactly.
Yes.
You talk to a realtor who's got the Bible of the listings, and everybody's, oh my God, this internet, we're going to put the pictures on the internet, we're going to lose business.
I was there for that. yeah.
Business actually increased. In the state of California, our counterpart, the California Realtors Association, did a study. And they said over the last 20 years, there's been a rapid increase in technology. So what percentage do you think the use of realtor is down over the last 20 years?
It's probably gone up.
It's gone up, you're exactly right, Mike, by 9%. 90% of the exchanges are using a realtor in that state. With increased technology, it's made the realtor's job more demanding, but people are using the realtor and the technology. And guess what generation uses a realtor the most?
Millennials.
Millennials.
Yeah.
And is it the fact that it's almost information overload? You want a realtor to guide you through?
People are
Or-
busy.
yeah.
They want that.
True.
And there is, we have yet to teach a computer how to negotiate.
Yeah, well,
And
there you go.
I don't know if we
It's
ever
like
will.
to do it yourself is like drinking water through a garden hose. You got lots of time, I guess you can do it, but not well. But you
Yeah.
also want somebody who knows the neighborhood cold,
Yes.
who knows inside and out of what's going on behind you, what the school's like, what the local stores
What's gonna
are
happen in
like
5
the
to 10
community.
years,
And
yeah.
realtors working around the clock to stay on top and keep their finger
Yeah.
on the pulse.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, do you really want a robot negotiating for you? Do you want somebody who knows you, cares about you, is looking out for your long-term future, and will get you the best deal?
And
And,
that's
and the quality of a realtor, the Ontario Real Estate Association is working hard to increase the quality of all of us overall. Enhance us, lift us up, I guess you would say. REBA 2000 or 2002 plays into that. The new act, what will it be called? REBA 2019? Or have we got it?
Maybe. We actually have been calling it
2.0?
that in our offices, yeah. So, you know, our number one job we talked about earlier, and that's to make sure there are more homeowners in the province. We want to keep that Canadian dream of homeownership alive.
Yeah.
Job number two, when you're making that purchase, you want to make sure we've got the highest professional standards, best training and education, modern tools,
always room
and
to-
discipline for those who break the rules and take
Yes.
advantage of somebody for the biggest transaction in your life. So how are we
For
going to
sure.
do that? We worked with the previous Liberal government and now with the PC government at Queen's Park. They've opened up the act. We're at the table. A couple of quick examples of what we want to see. We want realtors to have personal real estate corporations like other professions can have here in the province of
Absolutely.
Ontario.
They're the
They
standout
can
right now.
reinvest in a business in the community.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that we don't have this two-tier of consumer protection where if you buy a resale home, you've got a realtor who has high levels of qualification and a regulator. If you buy a new home, it's not the
Yeah.
same level.
Should
It's
be
not
the same.
fair to consumers. And we want to give our regulator greater authority because if somebody
Mm-hmm.
takes advantage of a senior citizen selling our home or whatever, we don't want to slap on the wrist. We want
No.
people kicked out of the profession.
I want to pause on that just for a second because
Yeah.
I think that especially our viewers need to hear that, see it. I'm visually underlining it, putting it in italics and bolding that statement that you just made. Your industry and the professionals whose livelihood and actually make a career and a vocation out of trading in real estate want more regulation. You don't hear that often, and I think it's important that the consumer hears that message. You want only the best of the best representing your industry,
Yep.
and you want consumer protection.
You got it. We don't want more red tape that's going to take longer for you to get your home or
there's
to
a difference
sell
there.
your home. However,
But
we do want to
disciplines.
have stronger standards and discipline. So we mentioned REBA of 2002 when I was minister. We set the fines at 2002 levels,
Yes.
right? They didn't keep up with inflation. That's why we need to update the legislation. And as a result, the fines can be a slap on the wrist or a greater ability of RICO. They're kind of like the referee, the judge in the system, to give them the authority to suspend or revoke licenses altogether for members who take advantage of
Excellent.
consumers.
And one of the other things that is being discussed around that table, I believe, is open bidding for listing. Curious about that. It's getting a lot of media attention. What are your thoughts on this process? How would this be a benefit if, or how does the industry think this is going to be a benefit?
So, you know, ultimately, like a viewer watching at home, your home is your biggest asset. And when you're retiring and you want to save your retirement or pass money on to the grandkids, or the kids come along, you want to upgrade, you don't want to fool around. So we believe fundamentally that the homeowner should decide how they want to sell the home. So let's give them options. If you want to use the current process that does protect privacy, it's closed bidding, RF doesn't know what Mike is bidding on my house. You have the right to do that. We should maintain that. However, if I wanted to say, like our game of Monopoly, put everything on the table, lay out, what your offer is, what your closing date is, how much of a down payment are you making, and does RF want the fridge, and you want the lawnmower, you can put that on the table. Let's give consumers a choice. But let's not force them down one lane, because that's not going to be good for everybody.
Now,
So
sorry, I was just wanted to ask, do you think the open bidding process will discourage the 50, 100,000 overbids that we've seen during real estate heated frenzies?
Is that good?
So you know what? I'm not sure, because in Australia, where they've got the open bidding process to the point where you can have the guy standing on your lawn auctioning off your house, right?
Yeah.
That some people say, hey, I don't like that guy over by the tree. He's overbidding me. I'm going to show him a lesson, and they get carried away. So it could be the opposite. I think that system could be vulnerable to setting up a stooge to try to push up the bids. That's possible. Another downside could be that you have to sacrifice your personal privacy to a group of strangers. So some may want to go that path, but it should be by consent.
So
we're talking about your financial information is so personal. Let's do it by consent. You opt in as opposed to
I'm
being
all
forced.
for that.
I want to play devil's advocate just
Yeah.
a little bit, because there are two kind of pillars, if you will, that I think about. Well, one is the idea that the phrase or the terminology transparency.
Yep.
And it is a word that gained some wide popularity in the last couple of years. I don't know if it's always been in a good light. Sometimes it's been in the reverse, in a bit of a negative light, an assumption that maybe we're not being transparent. Well, in my profession and when I was on council, I didn't like hearing that people say, "Oh, you need to be more transparent." No, we always operated on an assumption of full transparency. So transparency is important. I agree with that. But I think equally important is free enterprise, and I think equally important is the definition of fair market value.
Yep.
And to me, it was always, what is a willing buyer and a willing seller going to come together to agree on a price point, not under duress, right? That's the paraphrasing the terminology there. So if I'm willing, if my wife and I are deciding on a home that we want to look at and we want to buy, and we think, well, you know what, there may be another bid come in, what is it worth it? How important is it for us to have this house? Are we willing to pay a little bit more, and we'll get that back as the appreciation goes, in the right direction? Should I be taking that away? Should I be losing that right to go in with a bid that says, in my heart and in my gut, this is what I want, this is what I'm willing to pay for, and I'm willing to take the risk?
So no, you should choose what type of exchange you want to have, and we will always advise that you should go in there with your realtor who's going to keep you calm, keep you focused on your goals. It can be very emotional experience, right, to keep you focused on the ball. At the end of the day, we think that this should be an option for consumers that are out there. And let's not forget, there is a lot of personal, private information. We probably hold our financial information second closest to our hearts from our health. So we're working with the government. We think it should be an option for an open process, but let's not force it.
No, well, I like that.
We have got to go to break.
Okay,
we've got to go break. But Mike, what are we talking about when we come back?
I think when we come back, there's some interesting things. TICO, the Travel Industry Council of Ontario, brought something forward a little while ago. I think it'll be interesting to just talk on that, see where we are there, and just get some thoughts from you on our market as it is now and where you think we're going in 2008. And get your crystal ball out there if you can.
Stick with us. We'll be back right after the break.
Welcome back to Heading Home with Mike and Arif, and we're here with Tim Hudak, CEO of Aurea, and lots of great insights you're providing us with here today. One thing I was curious to touch on is the travel industry.
Oh yeah, this big scandal, eh?
The travel industry.
Yeah,
set us up.
It's a classic. Some background for folks at home. So it's classic red tape.
Yeah.
So realtors sell homes. They rent homes. And they also do vacation properties. Now, there's something called TICO, that's the Travel Industry Council of Ontario.
That's what I was stumbling on.
They're the regulator for travel agents. They said, well, if realtors are, renting out cottages for summer rentals, they should be registered as travel agents. So it got this word that our realtors had to go to travel school.
How do you become college of trades?
Travel agents, eh?
Not inexpensive either for that license.
Exactly. We pushed back, saying this is red tape and this is double licensing. The good news is the government responded and TICO responded. Now they're sitting down to make sure we don't have that overlap. But as an example, if you don't watch out, sometimes these regulators can get a little bit beyond what they're supposed
Empire
to be doing.
building.
You got
Yeah,
it.
for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, their licensing, work within your licensing and commercial licensing. There's a shift here that's coming
so
about.
talking about license, it's good. I mentioned earlier, and if people want to see what we've got on the table, you can go to REBA, R-E-B-B-A, REBAreform.ca. Our
Real Estate
37 ideas
Business
there.
and Brokers Act.
You got it. You passed. You got your license now. But we lay out the changes we want to see to benefit consumers and support our members and their practices. So one thing is, you see realtors, they say they're commercial experts or they're condo experts or waterfront, here along Lake Simcoe. So we say, let's actually have some standards around that.
Yeah.
So Mike says he's a commercial realtor. Well, what kind of specialty courses do you have to take to demonstrate to consumers? So that's another thing we put on the table, specialty licensing. And so far, the federal government and the Minister, Bill Walker, have said, you know what, let's talk about that.
I like the idea.
It's on the table.
Well, and this shouldn't be
great.
foreign to folks either, because you want to know that you're dealing with someone who's competent in that area of expertise, and you're going to go to an ear, nose, and throat specialist. You want to know that they were trained in that.
They don't work on the other end of the body, right?
Exactly.
It's wide and varied.
I like your style. I like your perspective.
Our closing, we only got a few minutes left, but I thought we would just talk about the market. We've had an interesting couple of years. 2017 saw that big run up with prices, and then it came back down, leveled off. 2018, we kind of spent recovering from that and dealing with changes to what lending regulations. Now we're into 2019. Does the consumer confidence return?
Well, let me jump in there just a little bit to give you some more.
Yeah.
So the market's, it's weird, right? All of the seasons that we knew about historically over the last 10 years are out the window in the last year. Yeah. Confidence you're talking about. We don't know if we're qualifying. Is it really a buyer's market or is it really a seller's market? Because you need to know the guy's qualified who's put in the offer. Has the pendulum come back to center? Are we going to swing the other way? What are your predictions?
Well, here's why I'm feeling very optimistic for two reasons. First, big picture, real estate has proven over and over again to be a good long-term investment.
Yes.
And on top of that, you can't live inside of a bond, you can't live inside of a stock and raise your kids there.
Right.
So it's also a place for fondest memories. That's why I continue to believe things are going to go up. A lot of people are moving into Ontario, particularly this area.
Demand,
and then
for
number
sure.
two, the federal government has listened. They're moving in the right direction, opening up new housing supply that'll give more choices and more affordable starter homes. And there is a national election coming up later this year, and I suspect both the Liberals and the Conservatives will put some ideas on the table to swing that pendulum back to balance from those mortgage restrictions that are making it harder, especially for new
Affordable
couples.
housing is on the lips of everybody come the
Feel
next
like
election,
we've
I
turned
think.
exactly. You want to win the election, you got to appeal to those millennials and their moms and dads who love them dearly, love to see them, but want them out of the house by now.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
so we have put backward pressure on the rental supply as well, and we have a federal election coming up in October. How's it going to play out in Ottawa in terms of legislation?
Yeah, I believe that both parties will be pressured, and here's the secret sauce, right? The biggest areas of vote swing between Conservatives and Liberals nationally have been in the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area, and then the Lower Mainland. And you pull millennials, guess the number one issue is in those two areas? Housing. And their mom and dad. That's a huge voting block to go either way. I'm confident that both parties, and we're pushing them, will put good ideas on the table so that next generation will become generation screwed. There'll be a generation with a home of their own.
Excellent.
I love it. So we've got 1 minute. Take us away. Get us out of here. Get us out of the show. What's Oreo working on? Obviously, you're working on that. You'll be keeping an eye closely on the different platforms of the different parties that are coming forward.
Part of our goal is to be on the side of homeowners and those who desperately want to become homeowners. So we've talked about increasing home ownership. We've talked about raising our standards for leaders in North America. And the third thing I'd say is other issues that might not be about ownership, but rental. I mean, to find a decent rental these days is really tough.
Yes.
We do more, including having more granny flats in homes, that sort of thing. Helps pay the mortgage.
Better transportation for commuters.
And then transportation. I think a big infrastructure investment needs to be in our trains, our rails, and our roads.
So we're going to have you back. We're going to have you back for sure because we want to know what has the impact of this been on the economy as a whole, and that's a whole nother show. So Tim, I definitely want to say thank you very much for joining us one more time. Thanks for making your way up here.
My pleasure. You stole me that $1,000, by the way.
Okay.
You didn't like the Monopoly money? We'll see you next time on Hitting Home.
Thank you.